hike alone sometimes. It's one of the few things that calms me down when my thoughts won't stop looping. You know that kind of anxiety where your chest feels too tight and your body itches to move, but you don't want to talk to anyone? Yeah, that kind. So I hike. There's a trail loop about 20 minutes from my apartment. Not super well known, but not remote either. 2.5 miles. Forested. Easy enough to do without getting winded, and more importantly, quiet. No traffic, no phones, just leaves crunching and birds chirping. Anyway, this happened last October. Weather was cool, sun was low. I left around 3 p.m. That would usually give me time to finish the loop before it got dark. The first half was uneventful. I passed one couple coming the other way. Smiled, nodded, kept moving. My mind wandered, like it always does when I'm out there. I thought about work, about the girl I was seeing at the time, about how much I hated the way I left my apartment. Dishes still in the sink, clothes on the floor. Then I heard a twig snap. It was behind me, sharp like someone stepping on it. I turned, expecting to see a deer or maybe a jogger catching up, but there was nothing. Just the path behind me, winding between trees and ferns. I stood still for a second, listening. Wind in the leaves. A bird chirped and flew off. Nothing else. I kept walking. After about 10 more minutes, I got the feeling again. You know, that skin-crawling, hair-standing feeling, like someone's watching you. I slowed down and glanced over my shoulder. There was a man, far back, maybe 100 feet, standing half hidden behind a pine tree. He wasn't walking. He wasn't even moving, just standing there, very still, till clothes were dark. I couldn't make out his face, but it was the posture that bothered me the most. His head was tilted, just slightly, like he was studying me. I turned back around and kept walking, faster now. I didn't want to freak myself out. People take walks. People stop. Maybe he was just resting. I didn't want to assume the worst, but I also didn't want to stop and talk to someone who gave off that kind of energy. Still, I kept glancing back every few minutes. The man was always there, not getting closer, just there. Always a bit behind, always just barely in view, sometimes to the left of the trail. Sometimes the right, sometimes I didn't see him at all, and I'd think maybe he'd turned around until I caught another glimpse of dark clothing behind the trees. He never walked on the trail. That's what kept bothering me. He was always off the path, like he didn't want to be seen, or like the trail wasn't meant for him. I made it to the halfway point, where the trail loops back. There's a wooden marker nailed into a tree there. Faded white paint with a red arrow pointing back the way I came. I stopped to catch my breath. I didn't see the man anymore, and for a moment I thought I'd overreacted. I even laughed a little to myself and muttered, "Idiot," under my breath. But as I turned to continue, something changed. The forest had gone quiet. No birds, no wind, not even the distant rustle of squirrels in the brush. It felt like standing in a soundproof box. That's when I saw the man again. Closer this time. He was standing on the ridge about 20 feet away, partially obscured by a fallen log. His head still tilted. I could just barely make out the shape of his mouth. Smiling. Wide. I didn't run. I couldn't run. My legs felt like concrete. I turned slowly and walked down the path, trying not to look back. My mind kept screaming, "Don't run, don't run, don't run." Somehow I made it back to my car without seeing him again. I got in, locked the doors, sat there with my heart hammering. The woods looked the same as always. Calm, peaceful, like nothing had happened. I told myself it was just a weird hiker, a creepy dude, maybe even a prank. Maybe I was imagining things. I didn't believe myself, not really, but I needed to act like I did. because what else was I supposed to do? I drove home, took a long shower, poured a drink, and convinced myself I was safe. Until around 2 a.m. that night, when I heard the knock. 3 slow knocks on my apartment window. I live on the 2nd floor. 3 knocks. Slow, even, like someone taking their time. I sat up so fast I nearly pulled a muscle. My bedroom was dark, only lit by the bluish glow from my digital clock, showing time 2:03. For a second, I wasn't even sure I'd heard it. I live alone, no pets, no roommates. But I held my breath and waited. Nothing. I told myself it was a dream. Maybe something in the wall settling. Maybe a branch. The window's right above a patch of shrubs after all. A raccoon, maybe? Still, I couldn't shake that sound. Not tapping. Knocking. I crept out of bed and went to the window, moving slowly, stupidly, like I was trying not to make noise, as if whatever had knocked couldn't already see me. I pulled back the curtain an inch and peeked out. Empty. The streetlight cast long shadows across the pavement. The shrubs below barely moved. My parking lot was silent, like the whole block had stopped breathing. I stood there for a long time, just watching, half hoping I'd catch some prankster running off. Nothing. No footsteps. No distant laughter. Just the stillness. I barely slept that night. The next morning I convinced myself again that I was being paranoid, that the hike had gotten in my head, that maybe I was sleepwalking or dreaming and imagined the knock entirely. I even checked my security camera. I have a small one that faces my front door, but it showed nothing. Still, I didn't feel right. All day, I had that weird pressure in the back of my skull, like someone was staring at me just out of view. I kept turning, expecting to see someone behind me. No one ever was. That evening, I texted my buddy Eric. B, you still hike that trail out near Calhoun Ridge? Eric, yeah, why? Me, ever see anything weird out there? Eric, lol, define weird. Me, like people standing off the trail watching you? Eric, bro, what the fuck? That's when I stopped. I didn't feel like explaining it all by text, and honestly, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid one, the guy who sees a dude in the woods and thinks it's some supernatural stalker. But then it happened again, 3 nights later. Same knock, same time, 2:03 a.m. This time I jumped out of bed and yanked the curtain open. I saw him. He was standing in the middle of the parking lot, facing my building. His arms hung limp at his sides. His head was tilted again, just a little. He didn't move, didn't flinch when I looked right at him. He didn't have a face. I mean, maybe he did. Maybe it was just a mask or shadows or something. But from where I stood, it was just this pale, blank space where a face should have been. A smooth stretch of white under a dark hood, like his head was carved out of marble. Then he raised his hand, slowly, deliberately, and he pointed at me. I let go of the curtain like it burned my fingers. I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking. I didn't even call 911 at first. I called Eric. He picked up after a few rings, groggy. Dude, it's 2 a.m. He's here, I whispered. The guy, from the woods. He followed me. What the hell are you talking about? I saw him outside my window. He pointed at me, Eric. A long pause. You need to call the cops, man. I did. By the time they arrived, the man was gone. Of course he was. I showed the officer where I saw him, told him about the knocking, even played back the security footage. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just a dead zone between 2:00 and 2:10. The footage froze and skipped. The officer said it was probably a technical glitch, power surge. I knew better. He offered to take a report, but I could tell he didn't buy it. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I bought blackout curtains, covered every window, kept all the lights on. I didn't leave the apartment except to go to work, and even that started feeling off, because I started seeing him during the day. Not clearly, just glimpses. A figure in a dark hoodie standing across the street when I left work. A man reflected in a storefront window who wasn't there when I turned around. A presence in the corner of my eye in the break room mirror. Never moving, never close, just there. Then things got worse. It started with the smell, like rotting leaves and moldy wood, like the forest floor after a week of rain. It clung to my clothes, to my sheets, even though I hadn't been back to the woods. Next came the dirt. Small piles of it on my doormat, on my windowsill, on the floor just inside my apartment door. It looked like the kind of black soil you find in the deep woods, thick and wet. I vacuumed it up, scrubbed, but it always came back the next day, a little more each time. Then, the whispering. Not voices exactly, more like the suggestion of voices, murmurs at the edge of hearing, like someone speaking behind a wall. I'd hear it when the TV was off, when I was in the shower, when I laid down to sleep. My name. I swear they were saying my name. Sometimes it came from inside the closet, sometimes from under the bed, but mostly from behind the walls. I tried to tell myself I was losing it, stress, a mental break, that I needed a therapist, not an exorcist. But then I found the footprints. Not boot prints, bare feet. Mud-caked, wide, with long toe-like impressions. I found them one morning in my kitchen, leading from the window to the hallway. I don't know how we got in. I changed the locks, bought cameras. I even salted the damn windowsills like I read online. Nothing helped. He wasn't breaking in. He didn't need to, because he was already inside. And then, last night, the worst part, I woke up to find dirt in my bed. I was lying in it. Cold, wet clumps pressed against my back and legs. My sheets were soaked, my skin itchy. I leapt out and tore the bedding off. And carved into the mattress, deep and jagged like with a knife, was one word: return. I didn't scream. I wanted to. I think I even opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Just this hollow, dry breath, like my lungs had turned to ash. Return. I stared at that word for a long time. It wasn't a hallucination. Wasn't sleep paralysis. My skin was still wet with the dirt. The sheets were ruined. My whole apartment smelled like damp rot. Like something had crawled out of the woods and laid down beside me. I didn't know what to do. Calling the cops again felt useless. What would I even say? Hey, someone carved a word into my mattress while I was asleep. Oh, and by the way, I'm pretty sure it was the faceless man from the forest who keeps leaving mud in my apartment. They'd lock me up before they helped. So I did what any desperate, half-broken man would do at 3 in the morning. I packed a bag, toiletries, clean clothes, phone charger, a flashlight. I threw it all into a duffel and left. I didn't even bother cleaning the bed. I just locked the door behind me, got into my car, and drove. No plan, no destination, just away. I ended up 2 towns over, checking into a cheap motel next to a gas station. The kind of place that still uses physical keys and smells like cigarette burns and bleach. I didn't care, as long as I wasn't home. I tried to sleep. I couldn't. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw the man standing at the edge of the woods, his head tilted, his hand pointing, his face, or the absence of one, imprinted in my mind like a brand. Return. To what? The forest? Why? What would he do if I didn't? Sometime after sunrise, I passed out. Not sleep, more like a blackout. I came to around 11 a.m., mouth dry, heart racing. I showered and sat on the edge of the bed for a while, phone in my hand, debating what to do. That's when the texts started. Not from a number I recognized, just a long string of random digits. No name, no contact picture, the kind of number that looked like it shouldn't be able to send texts. The first one read, "You know what you did." I dropped the phone like it stung me. It buzzed again. "You broke the rules. Then, return what you took." That last one made something lurch in my stomach. I hadn't taken anything from the woods. I hadn't. At least, not on purpose. But then I remembered. That strange clearing. The bone. It had looked like an animal bone. Small. Polished smooth. At the time, I'd picked it up without thinking. A weird little curiosity, something to sit on a shelf or toss later. I'd put it in my jacket pocket and forgotten about it. I checked my bag. Nothing. But I hadn't brought that jacket. I hadn't even thought about it since that day. It was still in my apartment. The texts stopped after that. But that night in the motel, I woke up at exactly 2:03, not from a noise, from the feeling. That pressure again, like someone standing directly behind me, breathing on the back of my neck. I turned, expecting to see him standing in the corner. But there was no one. Just the long, flickering shadows of the cheap bedside lamp and a new smell, even worse than the forest rot, metallic, like rust and blood. I slept in my car the next night. Didn't help. At 2:03, I woke up to find the inside of my windshield smeared with black handprints. Long, narrow palms and twisted fingers like roots. When I touched them, they crumbled into damp soil. I was running out of time. So, the next morning, I did the one thing I had left. I went back to the trail, back to Calhoun Ridge. It was gray out, overcast, low clouds hugging the trees. The forest looked different in that light, less alive somehow. The branches were still bare, the leaves damp and dead underfoot, and the deeper I went, the more it felt like something was pressing in on me. Like the air was thicker, heavier. I retraced my steps the best I could, cutting off the trail where I thought I'd gone that first time. The woods swallowed me in minutes. Everything looked the same, just wet bark and moss-covered rocks and mud. But I found it, eventually, that clearing. It was smaller than I remembered. Just a depression in the earth, maybe 10 feet wide, ringed with stones. I stepped into it, and the air changed. The temperature dropped. Every part of me tensed, like I'd stepped over a line. I pulled out my phone and took a video, thinking maybe I'd need proof later. Nothing showed up on the screen, not even the clearing, just blackness. That's when I heard the whispering again. Louder this time, not behind the walls, because there were no walls here. This was coming from the trees, from below the ground, from inside me. Words I didn't understand, language that made my skin crawl, my bones ache, like something ancient was speaking through me, dragging my thoughts through the dirt. I dropped to my knees and dug. I didn't know why. I just knew I had to. My fingers tore through the wet leaves and soil until they bled. My nails cracked. I kept going until I hit something hard. The box. Wooden. Old, wrapped in vines and something like animal hide. It was the size of a loaf of bread with a small symbol carved on the top, a spiral made of teeth. I pulled it out, cradling it like it might bite me, and the whispering stopped. The air cleared. The rot smell vanished, and I knew what I had to do. I had to bury it again, but this time, properly. So I did. I dug a new hole, deeper, lined it with the same stones I saw around the clearing. I placed the box inside, covered it with dirt, and whispered the word that had been clawing at the back of my throat since I'd first entered the woods. Forgive. Then I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I reached the trailhead, lungs burning, shoes soaked. I got in my car and drove home, praying that this was over, that he was satisfied, that I was free. I wasn't. I got home just before midnight. My apartment looked exactly the same from the outside. Same dim porch light, same crooked mailbox. But when I unlocked the door, stepped inside and closed it behind me, I realized something was wrong. The silence. It wasn't normal silence. It was oppressive, hollow, like walking into a recording studio with all the sound stripped out of the air. My ears rang with the absence of noise. No fridge hum, no creaking floorboards, not even the distant sound of cars on the street. Just nothing. I set my bag down slowly. The air smelled clean. Too clean, like antiseptic or fresh snow. Not a trace of the rot that had clung to my sheets. For a second I thought maybe the nightmare really was over. Maybe returning the box had worked. Maybe he was gone. But then I saw it. The bedroom door was open. I hadn't left it open. And inside, the mattress was gone. I stepped forward, cautiously, peeking around the edge of the door frame. The entire bed had been stripped. No sheets, no pillows, not even the frame. Just an empty rectangle on the floor where it had been, and etched into the hard wood beneath it, gouged deep like it had been carved with a claw, was a single word. Stay. My throat tightened. I backed away slowly and turned to leave. The front door was gone. I blinked. Where he had been just a moment ago, the door, the hallway, the coat rack, there was now only blank wall, seamless, white, like it had never existed. Panic swelled in my chest. I turned toward the kitchen. Gone. Bathroom? Gone. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. The walls were still there, sure, same colors, same texture, but they didn't connect to anything. Every door led to more of the same. A looping corridor of familiar but wrong spaces. Like I'd fallen into a copy of my home, printed from a broken memory. And somewhere in that maze, something moved. I felt it before I saw it. A shift in pressure, a flicker in the corner of my eye. I spun around and caught a glimpse, just for a moment, of a figure standing at the end of the hall. Too tall, head cocked at that same unnatural angle. Him, the man from the woods, except now, he wasn't just watching. He was coming closer, not walking, not gliding, just appearing. Each time I blinked, he was nearer. One frame at a time, like a slideshow of dread, I ran. I don't even remember picking a direction. I just sprinted down the endless hallways, turning corners that shouldn't exist, passing rooms that looped back into themselves. My heart pounded. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. And behind me, always just behind, he followed. Never faster, never slower, just inevitable. I collapsed in what looked like my old living room. Same sagging couch, same flickering floor lamp. I curled into the corner and tried to think, to understand. He wanted me to stay. That's what the word meant, stay. Not leave the apartment, not leave the forest. Or was I already in the place I wasn't supposed to leave? That's when I remembered the video I'd taken in the clearing. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and opened the file. It was corrupted, but not blank. The screen showed a single image, flickering, grainy, low resolution, a still frame of my own face, staring directly into the camera. But it wasn't a recording of me, because I had never filmed that. In the video, my face looked pale, lips cracked, eyes sunken, and behind me, barely visible in the shadows, were dozens of figures. Not just the faceless man, but others. People, men, women, children, all watching me with blank, hollow stares. All trapped, like me. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a dull thunk, the sound oddly distant in the muffled air. I wasn't just being haunted, I was being claimed, pulled into something older, deeper, a place beneath the forest, or inside it, where the rules of the world didn't apply, and I had broken something sacred. I thought giving the box back would fix it, but maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe I had seen something I wasn't meant to. Maybe he wasn't the only thing in the woods, just the one sent to retrieve what was his. I stood up and whispered, "I'm sorry." Walls shifted. They peeled open like paper, layers of drywall curling back to reveal wet earth and gnarled roots behind them. A cold wind poured in, and with it, that smell returned. The rot, the truth. The man stepped forward from the darkness. His face was clearer now, still smooth, still featureless, but something about it pulsed with hunger. A need. His limbs bent too many times. His feet didn't touch the floor. He pointed at me. And then, impossibly, he spoke. Not aloud. Inside my mind. "You stayed too long." My knees buckled. I sank to the floor. He crouched beside me, not out of kindness, but to be eye level. The air around him buzzed like static. My teeth ached, my vision blurred. "You opened the path. Now you must keep it." "Please," I whispered. "I gave it back. You returned what you took, but not what you are." I didn't understand, not until I saw my hands. They were fading, not vanishing, transforming. The edges of my fingers were cracking like bark, my skin drying, curling, blackening, veins like roots, my mouth filled with a taste of soil. I looked up at him. He tilted his head. "Stay." The walls collapsed around me, and the forest took me back. I woke up face down in the dirt. It was cold, wet, the kind of cold that doesn't just bite at your skin. It settles inside your bones, coiling like a parasite. I coughed and spat soil from my mouth, blinking against the fog that clung to everything around me. The clearing. I was back in the clearing, the mossy pit where I'd found the box. But the forest didn't look the same anymore. It was darker. Not night, just dimmer. The light didn't quite reach the forest floor. It floated above like it was afraid to touch anything. The trees had shifted. They leaned inward now, bent and coiled like they were trying to listen. Or maybe trying to trap. I stood slowly. My limbs felt foreign, like they didn't quite respond to me the way they used to. There was something stretched tight beneath my skin, tension, like piano wire. My hands were pale, my nails blackened. I wasn't bleeding, but I wasn't whole either. I turned around, scanning the tree line. I wasn't alone. All around the edges of the clearing, figures stood half concealed behind bark and shadow. I couldn't see their faces. Most didn't have any, but I knew they were watching. Some of them were like him, the man who followed me. Others were smaller, slouched, human-shaped, but off. They didn't move. They didn't breathe. They just waited. A low hum filled the air, and then, from behind me, a voice I recognized. "You weren't supposed to follow it back." I spun around. It was me, standing just a few feet away. Same clothes, same face, except older, tired, pale. The me in front of me looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His skin sagged around his eyes. His lips were cracked and dry. "I tried," he whispered. "I tried to warn you. In the video, the dream, the phone call." I stared at him. "What the hell is this?" "This place, it copies us when we pass through it. It remembers. It wears us like skin." "Why not?" "To keep the path open, to lure others, to feed." He looked down at his hands, flexing them slowly, like they didn't belong to him. "I made it out," he said, "but not all the way. Pieces of me stayed behind. They always do." I backed away. Behind me, the trees began to creak, groan. Something massive was waking up beneath the forest. "I don't want this," I said. "I didn't ask for any of this." He nodded. "None of us did. Then how do I stop it? How do I leave?" He gave a faint smile. "You don't." I ran. Not toward anything, just away. Through the trees, over roots and rocks, lungs burning. The forest twisted and shifted as I moved. Every tree looked the same, every turn circled back. There were no paths anymore, only me. And them, they followed, not chasing, just waiting. The same way he had, the same way I had. I stumbled into a ravine and fell hard, sliding down wet leaves and mud, scraping my arms raw. At the bottom, in a shallow pool of water, I saw it again. The box, unmarked, blackened with age, sitting in the water as if it had never been moved. It was empty, but not dead. It pulsed with something. Hunger, echoes. I reached out to touch it, and the world shuddered. Not like an earthquake, more like a ripple through reality. And for just a second, I wasn't in the woods anymore. I was in my apartment, standing in my bedroom. The mattress was back. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I was home. Everything normal. Except I could feel it watching me. From inside the mirror. From beneath the floor. From inside me. And when I turned on the light, he was there, standing at the foot of my bed, tilting his head. No face, no name, no voice, only purpose. You stayed, and I realized that's what he was. That's what they all were. People who had stepped off the path, who had wandered too far into that place beneath the trees, who had looked too long into the shadows and lost themselves. They weren't ghosts. They weren't demons. They were leftovers, remnants, shells, and now I was one of them. My reflection no longer matched my movements. My voice sounded like it came from a different room. The lights in my home flickered at odd hours, always just before I glimpsed him. And some nights, when I sleep, I wake up not in my bed but in the woods, back in that clearing, trapped in the loop. A memory walking through a place that remembers too much. I don't know how long I've been here. Sometimes I see new people walking past the tree line, hikers, explorers, curious types, and I try to scream. I try to warn them, but no sound comes out. Only silence, just like the first time. And if you're reading this, if you found this journal or this file or whatever scraps of me are left, do yourself a favor. Don't follow the path. Don't pick up the box. Don't speak to the man. Because once he follows you, he never stops. And eventually, you'll follow him back.